Greetings to HillCrest Wine Notes. I have some wines for you as part of our Thanksgiving special 3-pack that we're doing this year. And this is something we've been doing now for quite a number of years. I'd say for probably 10, 11 years. That wines that we share at our table with family and friends for Thanksgiving, these are wines that we kind of, throughout the year, we taste things and that, and we kind of think, oh, that's a wine for that table. And as I've mentioned before, the Thanksgiving table is actually the hardest table of the year probably to try to match wine with. And that's because of the range of textures from creamy mashed potatoes and cranberry sauce, high acid, to turkey kind of medium weight with the gravy and that. So you get a huge range of textures, huge range of flavors, earthy to fruity. And so we look for wines that have a punch to them, wines that have beautiful flavor, very intense, high acid in that, but are very kind of creamy and fruit driven, and that helps kind of lift the entire meal. The French actually have a saying that wine is a eunuch without food. And so the thing is that the wine's job in return is to really lift those flavors and to pop those flavors. And I think we've selected 3 really beautiful wines. The first wine as part of the 3-pack is Lancelot Royer 2012, which is a vintage champagne, 2012 Blanc de Blanc from the Côte de Blanc. And within Champagne, you have 4 major regions. There are 7 total, but there are 4 that are very well known and people talk about. Within that, there's one region that only produces white. And the 3 grapes of Champagne, of course, are Pinot Noir, the red, Pinot Meunier, that's kind of a sibling of Pinot Noir, and then Chardonnay. And Chardonnay, when you talk about Blanc de Blanc, it means white wine from white grapes. Blanc de Noir, that we oftentimes see in domestic sparklers, is white wine but from red grapes where the skins are separated before the fermentation process. Michel Chauvet, who's the artisan producer that produces this, we had the opportunity to taste with him at the winery in January, and it was truly a treat. Kind of, if you like the way we do things, it's very hands-on. I mean, we do really all the winemaking. We're the ones that are touching the wine, and so we see it all the way through the entire process from vineyard to winery. That's the case here. And in Champagne, it's at a very interesting phase that you always had many small producers that would produce and bottle wine. You had the larger houses that we see in grocery stores, Moët Chandon, Veuve Clicquot, Roeder, these. What's happened in the last 20 to 30 years is the big houses have grown and have begin to export so much wine that they go out and they source fruit from the artisan producers. So many of the artisan producers are no longer produce wine. Actually, they'll sell the fruit, and the equivalent right now, if you're in the Côte de Blanc, where this wine comes from, the fruit to make 1 bottle of wine is worth about $10 a bottle. So you very rapidly see these producers fade away. What I love about Blanc de Blanc is they're the most piercing wines, and when you have wines that are classically made anywhere from 5 to 7 years after the fermentation, the wines sit on the bottle, you get this really beautiful, it's a process called autolysis, this yeasty smell that's almost like brioche and super complex. And so the wines are dressed out and rich, but they're the most elegant of their type. And this wine is without a doubt the finest sparkler we've ever offered. And we've offered very few champagnes because, as you know, I mean, quality champagne is very expensive. And as a personal note, I mean, like when I drink champagne, I like great champagne. Everybody in the world likes great champagne. The problem with it is it's so expensive. Lesser champagne or sparkling wine to me is not very interesting. And as the old joke goes, I'd rather drink a Coors Light. So anyway, enjoy this. Super spectacular, both at the table as well as with dinner. Second wine is Domaine Griffy. And this is a small producer that actually has holdings in several of what are known as the crus within Beaujolais. So there's Beaujolais that's kind of fruity, simple, mostly in the flatlands. And then up on the hills, you have these villages where the soils change dramatically. And it's much like Burgundy or Pinot Noir, where the wines are named after the village, and that gives you different character. So on one extreme are very floral, elegant, lighter colored and flavored Gamay Noir, which is the grape of Beaujolais. And then on the other side are very meaty, powerful fruit, very strong textured, very almost like classic big Pinot Noir that we know so well here in Oregon. And so this is from the village of Morgon. And Morgon in this area it was a very shallow seabed. And so you have these oysters that have broken down into limestone, but it's a limestone clay, what the French call argile. And that clay tends to give you more power and more richness. And this wine has like a black cherry and this meaty aromatic nose and some phenolic. So it's a little bit almost more kind of chunky, chewy, but super beautiful black fruit, super perfumey, but it has a very, very racy acidity. Part of that is the grape and part of that is the vintage. It's a very, very classic, beautiful vintage. You want to make sure you serve it in a Burgundy balloon if you can, because you need to trap a lot of that smell. You need to give it kind of room to grow, and it's very luscious and beautiful. A wine like this, the problem is it drinks so fast. This is one of those wines that, that's so good, you pour a second hit, and the person sitting next to you pours their glass, and pretty soon there's nothing in the bottle, and you're waiting for dinner. So one warning. To finish up with, a dear friend of mine that I've known now nearly 40 years. When Susan and I first worked in the Mosel in 1987, I met this gentleman, and he had a small winery at that point as a younger man, like all of us, or those men around there. But I met him, and he was running his small family estate, and within a couple of years of my initial meeting, he married a girl from the other side of the village, and he lives in the village of Mering that's not very well known because there's just a few houses that control most of the vineyards. But across the river in a little village called Rieul was a young lady that he ended up marrying, and as part of the dowry he was gifted fantastically great old vine ungrafted Riesling vineyards in this beautiful gray slate, and there's massive quantities of it. He makes super beautiful, beautiful wines. They're very rich, so when you have a lot of slate, you get what we call minerality. And minerality is this kind of, this weighty richness that has like a wet stone character almost on the palate. And this wine is, in its flavors, kind of shocking. When you first taste it, the French along the French-German border in Alsace make Riesling as well that are very extracted, kind of spicy. This for German Riesling kind of leans the other way. The Mosel wines tend to be more piercing, but because of the vintage 16, which is a great vintage, the low yields and all of this slate, you get this mineral extraction, and you get really, really intense flavors in that. But the thing is, at the end, it has a little bit of a phenolic, and a phenolic is a little bit of that dryness. Tannin's a type of phenolic, and that kind of cinches this down, and it gives it more weight and makes it much more serious, and also it makes it much more interesting with food, I believe. It's a wine that can stand up to much bigger dishes than most of the Rieslings that we have, and so therefore at that table, once again, when you get something like stuffing cooked inside the bird, that's the reason I sit down at Thanksgiving table besides family. It really stands up to it in a beautiful way. Lower alcohol, so you can drink it and enjoy it, and you never have to step back a little bit. So anyway, we're offering these three, and you give us a call if you have any questions. They'll be up on the website as well as offered here in the tasting room. So we thank you for your support, and to the genie in the bottle, cheers.